Hey there everybody, it's Kelly Folsom here again, and welcome back to another Vital Art session. In today's lesson we are going to be painting one of my favorite classical still lifes of grapes with a pear. So let's get started. Okay, so here we have a very traditional classic still life theme. Definitely one of my first favorites when I started painting, and that is classic pears with a pear with grapes. So with grapes, I especially like it whenever they're hanging over the edge like this, and then they also create this beautiful cast shadow pattern onto the front cloth, and that immediately gives this still life some added depth of space, especially this shelf top still life. So it's important to kind of follow along with the stem of the grapes to get sort of that gesture. So the stem is much like the spine in the human body of the grapes, and I want to get a thick enough stem up here eventually for this for the thicker stem that is supporting all of the grapes. And I just want to mask this in. I'm just using burnt umber. Let's see, we'll add a little bit of blue to that and lightly kind of see what the shape is doing here for the cast shadow, and kind of seeing how the silhouette of a grape plus the cast shadow connect. There's a really nice you get these really nice peekaboos of light into the cast shadows, and then sitting a little further back. So anything that's further back on the picture plane, like here's the table edge. And so anything that's a little further back is going to be higher up on the picture plane. And then we have the baseline of the grape. It's a good idea to kind of put in all of your grounding baselines so that these objects sit really well on the tabletop. So this would be a baseline for the pear, slightly behind the grapes. And I love this fat. This pear just has so much character. This fat, bulbous pear. And we've got another beautiful stem there that has a lot of character to it as well. So I'd like to just see, okay, maybe this needs to go a little bit fatter. So if you have an object that, you're really trying to get its particular character, just really looking at it to see like where's the widest part. If I make it too skinny, then I've got a different kind of pear going on, and I really want to try to capture the quality of this particular pear. And then we also have a lot of asymmetry, right? So again, with nature, you have a lot of, you've got symmetry and order, but you also have a lot of organic, asymmetrical type shapes. So like this side tends to kick up a little bit higher than the other side, and then just kind of massing in something for the form shadow. Probably won't stay that dark, but that's okay. And we've got a nice little triangular shadow here. And one thing I love this, so you've got a cylindrical neck connected to basically a sphere when you're dealing with a pear. And then this particular pear has like a split. It's like two round sections that have kind of been merged together. So we wind up with this sort of curved shadow shape here, and then this little ridge here gets a little bit of light again, and the top plane of the pear here gets light all the way across. This is something that took me a long time to really see on pears for some reason. The fact that the shadow didn't come all the way up the pear. Cast shadow coming out, right? So that's going to tell us our direction of our light source. And then we get this one beautiful last little grape here on the surface. Okay. And then this panel is just toned in some raw umber. I basically have complementary colors with the red of the grapes, and these are like true red grapes. They're not black grapes. They're not, you know, sometimes the red is a little orangey, but these are really true grapes. So this is just toned in raw umber, and since I know that I have these complementary colors here, I want to I'm just going to stay really neutral in my background color. The cloth I have up there is kind of greenish, but I don't even think I want that much green in it. I think I'm just going to do like some raw umber and white. Yeah. We'll see if I wind up adding anything else to that. You know, I might do a little touch of black with the raw umber and white. And so just to get enough of this down, it's going to go a little bit darker on this side. And I really don't want this black outline there around the pear, so a lot of times I don't even draw that side of the contour on my objects because I know that it really just needs to be painted. The last thing I want to end up with is like a dark outline, which sometimes can happen if you get too pinned into your drawing. So we just need to get enough of this down to get started. And you know, one area that you can look at is actually the stem. The stem of the pear. That's an area that you can look at to judge the value that you need in the background. So the shadow side of the stem on the right hand side is darker in value than the background color. And then the lit side of the pear is a little bit lighter in value than the background color. So if you can find something against the background, something like that that has two different values that are, you know, one's maybe lighter, one's maybe darker, then I think you can more easily figure out a ballpark idea of the value that you need back there. I'm actually kind of starting to change my mind on this background color and switch it to burnt umber instead of raw umber. Something about the raw umber to me is just looking really gray. I think I'm gonna like this sort of duller purpley color with that green, yellow green of the pear really standing out. So I'll start making it a little more burnt umber like. I think that's going to be better. Okay. And then of course we've got a really bright, cool white of the cloth. So, and actually I might use some titanium white for that, since that is such a strong, crisp, cool white. And then that will start to give me my two, I'm going to use the Prussian, but this is going to start to give me my two extreme, I guess you would say extreme value changes. And I don't want to go to straight white. If I had to pick one of the primaries, if you remember that exercise, if I had to pick one of the primaries, I would blue, red, or yellow on this cloth. I think I would pick blue. I just see a lot of blue in it. It's kind of on the cooler side. So I'm going to use blue and orange with this white for sort of this false white here. And I'm just going to have a little bit more blue in it than the orange so that it's not a warm white, it's a cooler white. Then as I get down here to the bottom, I'm going to just have less paint. So really around the pear and around the top plane, I'm going to make that lighter. I'm getting hit with more light. And then this side's really falling into shadow. So I really kind of need like a bluish gray. So again, with my blue and orange. Be careful not to look at these as values just yet. We don't really have any specific value of the grapes established. So when you do your mass in with your underpainting color, be conscientious of that you're not sticking to that as a value that you're judging against, because this is going to go much more, I would say, darker and richer in color. So if I get too pinned in there, then I'm going to misjudge all of these other values in the painting. I'm going to leave some of this raw umber showing through here and there. We got a little peekaboo of light here, a little one up here. And then you could use that same mixture for the shadow color on white, just, you know, darker. Blue and orange. And if your orange is a little too orange, you can stick a little yellow in it. Or if it's going too green, you can add a little bit of red. Cab red light would be good. Okay. So then let's get down some really beautiful rich red. I'm going to go with some alizarin, some cab red light, and some ivory black. Just like a beautiful deep burgundy wine red to get this started. And I want to kind of squint and look to see how all of these shapes tie together. Usually they all mass together more in the center, and then some of them that stick out on the sides, like this one, get a more interesting negative shape and separation from the mass. So start to look at that contour and just put in your best guesstimation there. And we've got this nice little stem here. I love trying to find where I can pick up on a piece of that stem. And then perhaps one last little grape here at the bottom. I do have some grapes. I'm just going to make this a little longer than what I had. So that's a nice base color for these grapes. If you need to go darker, you can add more blue or you can add more black. Some of them, like this one's a little more blue. So start with a general idea of what the color and value is, and then you can start to sort of basically finesse that, bring more subtlety to it. So, you know, some little hits of blue, you can see how that's already bringing some variety to that shape. And then I also, let's go to the, you know, I can't help it. I'm going to pick out a few highlights front and center of the grape. You know, the ones that seem to stand out the most. I don't want to do all of them. This one's nice. And this also helps to get them to look grape-like right away without doing anything else, just that basic color and highlight. Helps them to look grape-like and also helps to create more dimension on the object by pulling the eye into the front center of the form. Alrighty, there's that. And make sure that you squint and really look at the value, or you can use a value finder to really analyze the value of the grapes, because a lot of times, even the green grapes, a lot of times are darker than what you think they are. So they're primarily a darker mass with a strong highlight on it, and then we'll do the reflected light here in a bit. So I'm just going to use some blue, orange, and a little bit of red here to get something that's not quite just black in for the shadow. And already I can see, oh, let's wipe some of this away, because that's getting more light back there, and it should be a little bit lighter. It'd be nice if I can show a little pinch of that tabletop plane, although I am trying to do this more of a shelf top, more eye level. Okay. So just trying to get some warmth, some glow. Just because the shadows look more transparent and warm in comparison to the light in indoor lighting doesn't mean that you don't use, you know, good solid coverage of paint. Okay, and then up here as well. All right. And then this is kind of a cooler yellow green. I'm just going to compare. I think the ultramarine with the cadmium lemon is going to be better, because I think the Prussian is going to be so, you know, minty, almost, you know, very cool minty green. Yeah. Like you can see such a difference between that, and I feel, you know, that's not quite the right color. And actually this one I think can be warmed up just a little bit more, so maybe a touch of orange in there as well, which will kind of neutralize the blue a bit. And remember again that you can break out your color wheel if you do get stuck on trying to mix the color. You know, you can break out that color wheel and you can compare, kind of do what I just did, kind of mix up, well, what does this blue look like with this yellow, you know, and start to make your judgment call by comparing what you're seeing and your mixture. And then if you need extra help even knowing how to begin, like what yellow to begin with, then you can use your color wheel for that. Okay, so this being a nice rounded form. This left-hand side here, the lit edge is going to be very colorful, more lighted, and then even as this ball starts to turn over here, this curvature, it goes a little bit lower in value. So it has a little more color in it. And then I don't have any white in this yet, so I'll get some of that on whenever I do the highlight. And then we have like this cleft here that comes back out, catches the light again. And so, you know, I want to make sure that I get that in there. You can make it look a little too sharp at first and then kind of come back and soften it up. There's also these really beautiful little touches of warmth as well on this pear markings that I think are important to get that color in there. So a little bit more orange mixed in. Again, thinking in terms of trying to transition the value a little bit darker on that side. Might actually take this side over here just a touch lighter and cooler, so some more white. Really looking at the curvature of that, you know, that asymmetrical hip, if you will. And using like broken, separated pieces of color and brush strokes to build more interest and dimension. So just raising the layer of paint a little bit. Down here, using some of that background color to mute the color here on this underplane as it's turning under. And even you can just kind of gently take your brush stroke and kind of drag the two colors together, softening this edge. I think that edge is always one that's really nice to soften. If I have all these different varieties of greens in my little pile here, then I can just keep adding variations to the color in this one area. Neat. Okay, and then it definitely gets way murkier in color wise and value wise. It gets very closer in value to the shadow color, and just kind of like a duller color really over here. And we must have this beautiful, crisp, clean highlight. I'm going to throw a little touch of blue, and the highlight needs to be quite separate, so not blended in too much. I always kind of blend a little bit of it in and then have a wherever the most distinct piece of the highlight is, it could be just a little dot, you know, that's separated. It's not softened in. And let's see, moving at a more rapid speed here, I suppose, to get the job done. Some of this beautiful orangey color, and then I'll use some of this grape color, maybe add a little more red to it for the shadow side here on the stem, you know, get a little more color there. And then you always have like it looks a little grayish. You can add more color to it if you want, like as if it were freshly picked, it would, you know, be more colorful. So that's up to you. But right on the top of the stem, a little piece of light, which will help begin to separate it from the background. And if you want it to look more crisp and clean, come back in with some background color. You may have to, you know, go a few passes on it to get it to stand out the way that you want it to. But again, that's got to have some amount of crisper edge paint. So let's work on this little grape. Just put in some crimson there. We need a very distinct highlight. Let's just do, you can either do crimson with yellow or crimson with orange. Let's try crimson with orange. Or you could do like cab red light. Let's try this. I think this can be fun. As the transmitted light that's going through the grape. So it doesn't have to be a much lighter value, but just something that's a little glowier of a color to be that transmitted light. It's crisper edged on the outside, and then kind of soften it into the middle there. So you can start to learn how to manipulate your brush to control. You're making one type of edge on one side and one type of edge on the other side, all in one brush stroke. So that's something really good to practice on. And it will also come naturally over time as you're trying to, first you have to understand what edges to make soft and what edges to make hard, of course. So I always use that little phrase, hard on the outside, soft on the inside. But if something is overlapping, you want, like this grape is in front of the grape behind it, you want to have a crisper edge there. And now that I see that, I'm like, oh, that highlight's a little low. The highlight would be more towards the top. So now that I'm revisiting that particular grape, I'm putting some of the green from the pear on there to tie the two colors together. Perfect. It's so beautiful. Such a beautiful combination. Anytime you can get complementary colors on the same object, or cool and warm again. So, and then like this grape closest to the pear, it's really fun to put a little bit of reflected light. If you really look, you'll see it there, very subtle in your still life, but you can make it more obvious in your painting. Same thing with the white cloth. That's going to be a cooler color, and you won't want to use straight white because that's going to compete with your highlight. So, and remember, reflections are always softer, meaning not quite as bright or not the same look of light as what you have, what the object is that is causing that. So, but some of that coolness there for the reflected light from that bright white cloth. So the brighter something is, the stronger the reflection is going to be. Same thing here, the white cloth bouncing light up into this underplane. Sort of like a yellow green, but coolness of that cloth. And then just trying to decide how strong do you want that to be. I'm going to put a little bit of this white cloth back behind here. we go. Just to help frame out that side of the pear, and the same thing over here. Little peekaboo negative shape of the white cloth back behind, carving out the silhouette of the pear a little bit stronger, and of the grapes. Get a little hint of some stronger light on the front edge here. The only thing I didn't really get too much of a chance to do would be some of the dusting on the grapes. So I'll just show you kind of like a violet mixture. Not violent, but violet. Almost sounded like I said violent. It's sort of a bluish gray, and this one might be really nice to do to make it stand out from the background. So that getting that value change there, or perhaps here on this one. Again, let's relocate the highlight. Okay, so sometimes you can just pick up your brush and push. If you have a thick enough piece of paint, you could just drag it about or reposition it, and sometimes that actually looks better than what you originally had. But just learning all the different ways that you can use your brush to make things happen. To take paint off, to put paint down, to move it around. And we have our little stem there. All right, guys, happy painting to you. Thank you for watching. Bye.